Good morning and welcome to today's online AutoCAD user group. Today's topic is the tips and tricks for Autodesk AutoCAD. And today's host is Ryan Wunderlich. Ryan, the floor is yours.
All right, welcome everyone. Just so you all understand, today's attendees, you will all be muted throughout the call. If you have any questions throughout the presentation, please post them in the Q&A panel. We will attempt to answer as many questions as we can following the presentation. And let's go ahead and give you a little bio on myself. My name is Ryan Wunderlich. I have been using AutoCAD for approximately 33 years this year across multiple industry segments. I've taught AutoCAD at a community college as a certified instructor, and I also teach AutoCAD, Civil 3D, Revit, InfraWorks, and a multitude of other programs here out of our Boise, Idaho office. I've had 15 plus years of experience in CAD management. My last job before here, I was in 8 plus years in cruise ship building, both new build and revitalizations. I've done 5 years of support for civil survey landscape architecture before that. Part of that was converting 6 offices and over 200 users from land desktop to Civil 3D. I've worked in mechanical design, electromechanical design, printed circuit board design, schematic design, architectural, acoustic, as well as doing equipment layouts in industrial spaces. I have a bachelor's degree in business management and a master's in organizational management. I'm also very passionate about CAD. Those of you who have been on a few of my webinars know that this is what I love. So a couple of things here is that we're going to just cover a quick top 10 today, tips and tricks for AutoCAD. We're going to have some arc fun, which is clockwise versus counterclockwise. We're going to talk about the Oops command. We're going to do a little bit with measure and divide in case you've never used those before. We're going to talk about how to import text from a file into an MText editor box. We're going to talk about QSelect and select similar. We're also going to talk about in your base AutoCAD how to turn on aerial imagery. We're also going to talk about Textallcaps, AliasEdit, how to import and export your workspace, and then we're going to talk about my favorite, a Bootstrap acad.lsp. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to start with some arcs. So normally when you draw an arc, it's going to draw the arc in a counterclockwise direction. And what you do is you simply hold down the control key and it changes the arc direction. This is a very easy piece to understand. So when you come up here to arc, and you select anything but the 3-point arc. So if I go start, center, end, I pick my start, I pick my center, and you'll see it wants to draw this in a counterclockwise direction. If I hold down the control key, it will flip that over and draw it in a clockwise direction. This is something that I teach to my AutoCAD students on a regular basis, just because this is something that's not well documented, and a lot of times when you're drawing an arc, you draw it the wrong direction, you pick the wrong start or end point, or you may need to draw the arc in the other direction. So again, control key is on, clockwise, control key is off, counterclockwise. Right, that's a piece of cake. Now the Oops command, this is an old school command. This one's been around since release 2.6, thereabouts. Restores the last set of objects erased from the drawing, and you just simply type in Oops and watch the magic. So, right, I can just put in a quick rectangle here. I can put a line through that rectangle. I can go ahead now and just simply erase this. And then I can continue to draw another line. I can continue to draw another this. I can draw a circle right here. You know, I'll come up here and do a start, center, end, clockwise arc here, and I'll go, oh wait, I wanted that first rectangle, so I do go oops, OOPS, and there's my last object I erased. Okay, this is one of the clever hidden tools of AutoCAD, and this is how we used to do it old school. So measure and divide. Measure allows you to place AutoCAD points using a specified distance along a selected segment. This can be a polyline segment, a line segment, an arc segment, etc. Divide creates AutoCAD points along a segment equally based on the number of segments specified. In addition, this is how we used to do old school array along paths with blocks. The new array now actually includes that to array along a path, so it does make it a lot easier, but this is the old school array. So how we do this is we come in here to this one, right? And I've got 2 polylines here. If I click on them, you'll see that they're polylines. And the first one is measure, right? I will go, right? And that's under our modify tools here. And where is that? Sorry, I'm used to typing it in. So measure. Let's see. Right, I did say measure. Yeah, measure. All right, so we go measure, select the object to measure right here, and it wants to know the length of the segment. So if I specify this segment, I want this segment to be maybe this long. What it will do is it will actually draw and put in AutoCAD points at each distance, and that actually takes into account the arc length here. So it's the true arc length here, and then whatever remnant is left over is here. When you do divide, the process is a little different. So you select the object to divide here, and it asks you for the number of segments. So if I want 5 segments here, what it's going to do is it's going to put in 4 points, and it divides this polyline segment equally into 5 components. Now, mind you, it does not break the initial line or polyline that we drew. All it does is put AutoCAD points in its place. That allows you to go ahead and see where you've gone, things like that. So if you need to measure or divide something equally, this is the best way to do it. So the other thing you used to be able to do, and you still can do today, is you can measure. You can select the object to measure, and you can come down here and you can actually say block and enter the name of the block to insert. So you actually have to know the name of this block. So if I click on this block is called Sun Lounger, right? So I go measure, and I'll click on this, and I'll go block, and I'll say Sun Lounger. And do I want to align the block with the object? I'm going to say yes, and specify the length of the segments. I'm just going to go ahead and pick an arbitrary value from here to here. And you'll see that it did go ahead and do that. I've scaled this block down. So it actually inserted, what it does is it actually reinserts this block, and you'll actually see that these were all scaled up by a factor of 25.4. If I change those to 1, now you'll see that these are correctly scaled. So one of the things that measure does, and divide does the exact same thing, is when it inserts these blocks in here, it uses the insertion value, right? So if you go to units to scale of inserted content is inches. This was actually drawn in millimeters, which is why it's scaling up by 25.4. So divide does the exact same thing. You select the block, you select how many ones you want in here, and it will do the exact same thing, right? Old school array along a path. Now, import text from a file. This only works with MText. You basically start the MText command. You define the area of the MText box just like you normally would. In the ribbon, you click on the Tools heading, select Import Text, and you can also right-mouse click in the text area and select Import. What will happen at that point is it will browse out, it will bring up a file dialog where it wants you to browse out to a text file. It must be in a .txt or .rtf format. Click OK, and the text contained in the file is now imported into the MText box. So what that does for us right here is we come back to this drawing right here. We just go ahead and start our MText, right? Multi-line text, define this, and our ribbon will go ahead and transfer over here, and you'll see here's our tools. You'll see our import text here, and I can browse out to, I just have a simple text box here, and you'll see that it goes ahead and brings in that information. So if you guys have a common set of notes or things like that that you bring into the drawing, this is the easiest way. Now, these are not tied back to one another. So that means that once you've imported that text, it's live in this drawing, and it's not tied back to that initial text file. I like the import text a lot because it allows me to have a running set of notes for a drawing, common notes, things like that, and then I just insert it once into my title block or any of my sheets. I edit as necessary, so that way I'm not retyping constantly, and I'm not copying and pasting from Word. Those of you that have copied and pasted from Word sometimes find out that there is some extra garbage that gets left over here, and you can't change the font type, or you can't change the style, the size, things like that, because there's an override. So this is usually the best way to do it. Right? Piece of cake. We're moving on. Now we're going to get to one of my favorites, and this is one of the least utilized commands that I think everyone should learn how to use, and this is QSelect and Select Similar. So these both work in a very similar manner. So QSelect requires you to select the criteria to make a new selection set from. Select Similar uses a selected object or objects and will add objects that have the same properties to that selection set. So I will actually demonstrate both of these. So with QSelect, in the dialog box, basically you type in QSelect in the dialog box that pops up. You click Apply To. Do you want to apply it to the entire drawing? If you have grabbed a group of drawings, you will see that you have a current selection set. You then go ahead and filter this down, whether or not you want the entire drawing, etc. Then you will go into the object type where you can actually go through and define what you want to look for. It can be all objects. You can just pick out just specific line objects, things like that. And then you choose the properties that you want to filter on. So do you want to look for anything that is a specific color, that's a specific layer, line type, scale, etc. And then you go into the operator field where you want it to have equals, not equals, etc. And then you've got a value where you can choose by layer, specific color, things like that. And then when you go to the How to Apply area, it specifies whether or not you want to make a new selection set based on this information, if you want to exclude this information from a new selection set, or do you want to append this to a current selection set. So if you've gripped on some objects and then you want to add to those objects that you've already clicked on, which is a selection set, you can go ahead and append it to the current one, so it'll add whatever you've Q-selected to that. The other thing about QSelect is that QSelect can actually be accessed right from here. There's Quick Select, right? And that brings up this box. And we'll go through this box, and then we'll talk about Select Similar. So in here, I have a large number of blocks, things like that. There's a whole bunch of information in here, and you'll see that there's stuff, random layers, things like that. So now I can start doing some filtering. So I can come over to Properties, and I can do QSelect. And now what I want to look at is I'm going to go through the entire drawing. Now if I pick just a selection set here, so let's say for example I just want this group of objects, and you'll see it says current selection. So that's this gripped group of objects. Otherwise I can always flip it back to the entire drawing. And you'll see that I'm looking at multiple object types. I can actually see in here that in this drawing there are lines, text, polylines, block references, circle, arcs, hatch, attribute definitions, solids, points, and ellipses. So for example, I'm going to check point, and I'm going to go ahead and I can see here that I can select these points by color, by layer, by line type, etc. Some of the other things, if you go block reference, you'll see in block reference you have some different criteria. So you could actually filter block reference by name, and it will actually give you all of the blocks that are named blocks in your drawing in this list, and you can grab those that way. In my case, again, we're just going to come back to points, and I'm going to just say equals, not equal to, greater than, less than, or select all. So all I'm going to do in here is hit select all. I'm going to include in a new selection set, and I'm going to hit OK. So right here is a point that was filtered out, and that is the only point that is in this drawing. And this gives me the option to very quickly just erase it. And now when I go back to QSelect, right here, you will see that there are no more points in the drawing. So if you have a problem, or you have if you have a problem object or things like that, or you have something in the drawing that you know is there and you can't find it, you can use this very quickly to filter it. Okay, so let me back up here. Where do those notes get set up? Anyone can set up those notes, Michelle. It's just a standard Word. It's just a standard Notepad or a WordPad document, and the format that the text to be imported to has to be either in an RTF or a .txt. Yes, and make sure that he mentions that QSelect is case sensitive in the wildcard match and that asterisks are required. Yes. So if I'm in here, let's say I want to look at all block references, and I want to do, actually block references don't work, circle. Let's go into text, contents, and you'll see that there is a wildcard match here. So if there's text in the drawing, I have to do a wildcard match. So I would have to go star, pipe star, And anything that contains the word pipe, which are all of these objects, gets selected. We go back here, right, and we're going to go back to text. We're going to go back to contents, wildcard match, star, star pipe, star lowercase, and you'll see it does not pick those. Those are case sensitive under the wildcard match. So that's something to be aware of, and thank you very much, Frank. So that's all about QSelect. So now let's flip back over here and let's talk about Select Similar. It's kind of a similar process, but Select Similar only works on objects you've already selected. So type in the command and select the settings first. So your typical Select Similar settings are usually layer and name. You can go ahead and put check marks in here, and these are the things that it's going to select similar based on. These are AutoCAD specific, so these are actually stored in the AutoCAD variables as part of your system variable. So once you've changed these settings once, they stick around. Here, I'll get back to you on the insert select blocks with the same view state. We'll have to insert a dynamic block to do that. And so now you can either select click on an object and type in Select Similar, or right mouse click and select from the pop-up menu. It will use the previous settings to get all the objects in the drawing that match the initial selected objects. So again, when we come back to our annotative blocks here, I can go ahead and type in Select Similar. And I'm going to go my settings. And so I'm just going to match anything based on the same layer and the same name. Okay, so if I click on this object right here and go enter, you'll see what it did is it grabbed all of those objects that have the same layer. And you can do the same thing with text. So there's a different level of granularity. Select Similar is not highly filterable. So when you do Select Similar and you click on an object like a block, it will grab all the blocks that have the same name. It won't necessarily grab that when you have the name changed. So if I go back to, right, so if I just click on this object and I right mouse click, you'll see Select Similar right here. And you'll see that it actually grabbed all of the line work because I do have some things that are blocks and some things that are not in this drawing. So this is just a good filtering method. Again, click on the text, select Similar, and it is going to select all the text in the drawing that has the same properties, the same layer and the same name. So it actually grabbed all of my white text here and all of my white text here. So let's come back and let's go ahead and go Control-3 to bring up a tool palette. Let's bring in an imperial door, right? And we'll bring in another imperial door here. We will change our view state, right? And we will move this block over here. So now when I do my QSelect, and I'm going to look for a block reference, and you'll see that I have name, block units, and unit factor and information. But as far as the view state, there is no way to select the view state from here, because there's not a view state here in the block reference. And it actually says just block reference. It doesn't say dynamic block reference, and that would be a nice to have. But currently it's not in there. So you've got name, rotation, annotative, block unit, and scale factor. So you'll see here that we do not have the ability to select blocks with different view states. It's all based on the name of the block. So if we go name and we go down here, and I believe, what was this called? This is door something if I remember right. Door imperial. And I go okay, you're going to see it grabs both of those. So there's not an easy way to handle that same view state. All right, select Similar. So how many of you have ever used aerial maps or wanted to use aerial maps? Now we're going to talk about how we do that in just regular AutoCAD with a few quick steps. So the only way to get to this, unless you've turned on something specific or added something, is we're just going to go back to our drawing right here. We'll just go ahead and erase this information. Come back in here and we type GEO, G-E-O. And it says geographic location. Do we want to set from map or file? So we click on map. And what it should do is it should bring up our geographic location. So we can go, let's go New York City, New York, right? You can type in an address. You can type in just a city. You'll see here that I'm just looking right here, New York, New York. I'm going to drop the marker here. I'll click next. Right, and all of this is right here to find an address, to find your location, etc. So drop your marker, select the correct address, click next. Select a GIS coordinate system. When in doubt, use a WGS or a HARN one. Sometimes it's hit and miss to get a good one, unless you're very familiar with how the different coordinate systems are set up. Most of these are surveyor based. The WGS or the HARN generally are a little more flat as opposed to having the maps contoured for curvature of the earth. And then once you've done that, you click next and then enter to set the point, enter to set the angle for north. Now we'll get in here and then we'll come right back to this. All right. So I'm going to come down here and I'm just going to go ahead and find this one, and you'll see you've got meters and feet. If you're working in a foot drawing or you want feet, click that, click next. It says set the point for the location. We just hit enter, north, enter. And what should happen here is we drop a geographic marker in, and then there's a map of New York City. All right, we can zoom out and we can see this is everything that's included in that aerial map. So if you only need a small section of this map, what I generally recommend here is that this map will not print. So when we come back here, it will not plot, but you can capture an area which will plot. And then you can also turn on roads or a hybrid of roads and aerial imagery. So let me show you that. So the first thing we're going to do is you have your map aerial up here. If we go to road map, what it's going to do is it's going to turn this back into standard road map, just like you would see in Bing Maps or Google Maps. I can turn on a hybrid, which what it's going to do is bring on the aerial imagery, and then it will actually put your streets on top of that, faded back. This is a pretty cool feature. So if we go back to our aerial map here, and you need to capture an area, just click here, right? Click here. And now this area that's delineated by this box right here will actually print. So when I go to my plot preview, for example, and I'm just going to go ahead and show you this, general documentation, right? We'll go ANSI D like this. I'm going to just do my display and I do the preview. All you're going to see is the box that I captured. The aerial background is not included in that. But that's how you get aerial imagery into just standard AutoCAD. I'm just using base AutoCAD here. Base AutoCAD 2020, nothing special, nothing other than the out of the box. So you can always use that right there. Now, any questions on? No, it is not only in AutoCAD 2020. This functionality has existed since 2015 or 2016. So. Now, text all in caps. Most of us have standards where all of our drawings need to be in capital letters. And how many of you are guilty? Can this function work without internet? No, you have to have an internet connection in order to get the geographic maps, and you have to have an Autodesk account. So text all caps. Ever been frustrated in having AutoCAD drawings always need to have all capital letters and forgetting to turn caps lock off? How many of you have yelled at people over email, Skype, because you have your caps lock on, right? We've all done that. So now you can type in the command text all caps, and what that will do is that anytime you place or edit text in AutoCAD, it will be in all caps. So when we go back into our example here, I'm just going to go ahead and turn the map off, right? So if I go text, all caps, right here, and I'm going to turn this on, what you will see here now is when I type in my MText box. Now, mind you, my caps lock is not on. You know, this is a testing, right? And you'll see that my text is, wow, there it is. Zoom in here. You'll see that my text is in all caps. I did not, and my caps lock is not off or is not on. So if I turn my caps lock on, right, so you'll see here as I'm typing commands, right, it's all lowercase letters down here. But anytime you're modifying or editing text, this will be in all caps. This is one of the hidden features and functions that I absolutely love because I normally have this left turned on. Does it apply to text in leaders? You can create the reference to the map, with the internet, but it will not appear unless you have internet connection to bring that map in. Okay, it does need to be tied back to the internet. So does Textallcaps apply to text in leaders? Right, so we'll just do, right, we'll go to annotate, multi-leader, here, right, multi-leaders MText. Answer to your question is yes. Where you activate this? Are you Steve, are you talking about the maps? Or the Textallcaps? Yep, all you do is you type in text all caps, all one word. Text all caps, and it says enter new value, turn it on. Once you set text all caps, it's a system variable. It's going to be set permanently in your AutoCAD unless something changes in it. So it should work in all drawings. Right, so I've got my text all caps turned on here. If I go to this other drawing right here and I go MText, right, and I zoom in, it's all capital letters. My caps lock is currently turned off. You type in text all caps and you say off to turn it all off. Asking about block attributes. I don't know if I do have a block attribute in here. Let's go find out if I have one with an attribute. Oh, yep, I sure do here. All right, so this is our attribute editor right here. You'll see my value of X. And I go Y, and it does not work in this particular. Okay, text all caps is currently turned on. Right, I'll go back here. Right, just edit this. If I hold down my shift key and go VVV, it does not. When text all caps is on, it ignores any shift or caps lock, and it will always do things in all capital letters. Now, how many of you are keyboard typists? It is a system variable. So special characters, no. Special characters are generally ignored. So you will need to use shift key for parentheses, things like that. It's only for the standard 26 letters of the alphabet. So alias editing can be hard. Used to be very hard. You used to have to go find a specific file called a PGP file, manually edit it. Okay, if it says maps cannot be displayed in 2018, there's a geolocation hotfix that needs to be applied. Kelly, we can talk later, or I can help try to get you in the right path for that. So alias editing used to be very hard. You used to have to go find a PGP file, manually edit it. Now it's easier. For those of you that ever like to use keyboard commands, I'm primarily a keyboard command user. I've been using AutoCAD 33 years. So most of the stuff that I have or do is on the left-hand side of the keyboard. So now we've got something called alias editing where you can typically change these things, right? So we go back into here, and all I'm going to do is go up to my Express Tools, go to Command Aliases, and it brings this up here. So these are all of my letter commands, right? So if you come down here, you'll see A is currently set to ARC. If I want A to be something else, you just simply click Edit and change it. The typical ones that I change when I start up AutoCAD for the first time, the typical ones that I change is I do not like C as circle. I like C as copy. I use copy far more often than I draw circles. I also do D for distance because it normally brings up DD style, which is dimension style editor, and I think D for distance is far more familiar to most of us. I change R from rotate because nobody needs to redraw anymore. And generally I change P to plot, and you'll see I still have P set to pan here. It's pretty easy. You just click edit. It brings up this, and I'm going to change the command to plot. Right? I hit OK. It'll say, do I want to redefine it? I'll go yes. Now alias P refers to plot. And now when I hit the letter P, there's a box dialog hiding here. I redefine that. It's been updated. And now when I hit P, it brings up my plot dialog. All right, simplest thing in the world, but AliasEdit is one of those infrequently used tools, especially for old school CAD users that do a lot of typing. It's nice to set up the letters the way you like them as opposed to what Autodesk has out of the box. It's a great tool. So, import and export workspaces. Once you have a workspace the way you like it in AutoCAD, you can save this to a custom CUIX file for use on other machines. So first, save your current workspace, right? You go in and save. Now that you saved it in, you type in CUI, and you click on the Transfer tab. Now you click and drag your workspaces from here over underneath the workspaces here. Now you click the Save button on the right, you save the CUIX file, and your custom workspace is now saved here. Now to restore this on a different machine or to yours, let's say you had to uninstall and reinstall the software. If you've saved out your workspace, you can restore that workspace back very quickly. You follow the previous steps to get to the Transfer tab. You click Open right here, and you click and drag the other direction. Drag it from the right over to the left. Hit Apply, and then select the imported workspace and set current. Right, and we're going to go through this exercise. So I'm going to go ahead and I can go ahead, and you'll see I have drafting and annotation, 3D basics, and modeling. So I'll go save current as, right, and I can call this Ryan's workspace right here. And then again, we type in CUI to bring up our QE editor. I go transfer, and you'll see that I have my Ryan's workspace right here. Again, I click and drag it right over here to Workspaces. And now I'm going to save this file right here. It wants me to save this as a customization file, you know, Ryan's workspace right here. And so now I've saved this customization. So anytime I go onto a machine, and I can actually cross boundaries with this machine or this workspace. So I can go back, okay, workspaces are very different from profiles. Profiles are setting up things in options such as file paths. All the workspace is doing is setting up my initial environment. Okay, and I will show you what that means. So now we're going to restore a workspace, right? So we follow the same process, and you'll see that I do not have AutoCAD Classic in here. So what I'm going to do is put my AutoCAD Classic the way I like it. So I'm going to open, and you'll see I have my Classic workspace right here. And I'll click Open, and you'll see I have AutoCAD Classic. I'll click and drag it over here. I will right mouse click, and I will set this to current, and I will hit Apply. And now when I come back out of this, this is now AutoCAD Classic workspace. And you'll see that my crosshair's updated to be 100%. The only thing that is being changed in the profiles, okay, when you're setting up profiles or things like that, what you are setting is you're setting up your file support paths, and you are setting up some of these variables like the regen when switching layouts, some of this information. That's what gets set up in a profile because that's all registry entries. Okay, what you're setting up in a workspace is the visual of how you use AutoCAD. So I prefer the AutoCAD Classic workspace. I have not added it to my 2020 yet, and now it's in here. And so this is how I normally run it. And again, to switch back and forth between different workspaces, I can go back to my Ryan's workspace. right? And that brings back my ribbon and things like that, or I can go back to my classic. Now we're going to talk about the good one. There's something that you can create called a Bootstrap, and you name it acad.lsp, because most of us have run across this before. You've ever had AutoCAD crash, or you've had something happen in AutoCAD, and the next time you reopen it, some things get changed. Usually the big one is file DIA or command DIA gets turned to 0 from 1, where you go to open up a drawing and it opens up in command line as opposed to bringing up your dialog box. So how I fix that is I create something called the Bootstrap file. It's named acad.lsp, and we use it to fix these pesky, these pesky changes that occur. Basically what you do is you open Notepad and you add a few lines of code. Here's part of what mine has. So I have something that says set file DIA equals 1, sets the file dialog box to open. Attribute DIA, ATT DIA, sets that to 1. So when I do attribute edit, brings that dialog box up. CMD DIA sets the in-place text editor and certain dialog boxes to open properly. Here's one of my favorites, OS mode 109. This sets my OSNAPs to my preferred set of OSNAPs. My preferred set is always endpoint, center, node, insertion, intersection. That's what the OS mode code 109 is. If you have a particular set that you like, type in OS mode and it will return you a number and tell you what your preferred is. And then I have a couple of commands in here. So anytime I open up AutoCAD, what it does is that my Bootstrap sets my layer current to 0. So it doesn't matter what anybody was in or what layer they were on when they left that drawing, it automatically brings my drawing up and resets me to layer 0. So I can pick and choose so I don't have to remember what I was on or where I was before that. I have a command here called UCS icon. This sets, and I set that to no, so it does not leave my UCS icon at the origin. Mine always stays in the lower left-hand corner of AutoCAD regardless of where 0, 0 is. And then I have the command grid off, so it turns grid off in the drawings, because how many of you have ever turned on grid or opened up a drawing that has grid turned on? So you save this as an acad.lsp, make sure it's not a .txt, and then you save it to C, Program Files, Autodesk, AutoCAD 2020, 2019, 2018, 2017, etc. support. And every time you open up AutoCAD, it will set those values ahead of time. So that's what is really important about this, is that the things that generally go wrong, this file DIA, CMD DIA, OS mode, how many of you have opened up a drawing after a crash and your OSNAPs are gone? Okay, you can fix that. Okay, Mark, I believe that this will be posted to either the portal or YouTube at some point. Okay, and Michelle, yes, the aliases are set permanently for AutoCAD. Thanks, and thanks for the Bootstrap. Do we type it in as exactly as seen? Okay, so let me show you what one of mine bootstraps. AliasEdit cannot combine 2 steps of a command. You can't do ZE for zoom extents. No, you cannot. There's a different way of doing that, and that would be more Lisp code, where you set up a function to do zoom extents. So let me kind of show you what this looks like in a working sense. All right, I actually have a lot of things going on in essentially my Bootstrap file, so hang on just a second. Right. So here's how I have mine set up. It just simply looks like this. Right, so I'm actually setting a larger number of things than most people. I set QA flags to 0, safe fidelity to 0, file DIA, etc. I set expert mode to 5. HP separate, I set that to 1. So the hatch patterns are always separated from their boundary. Hatch pattern quick preview, I always set that off. My default hatch pattern will always be solid when I set HP name here. Here's my polyline width. I automatically reset any polyline widths to 0. So when I start my next polyline, it's already set width to 0. I set everything to bilayer for color and line type and line weight, because sometimes people will screw up stuff in the drawings. And then this is where I set my layer. So for your zoom extents, and I may not have it up here anymore. Yeah, I used to have a zoom extents up here. I've gotten rid of it, but basically you put in the code like this, defun, and then you put C:ZE, and then parentheses, close set of parentheses, open parentheses, command. You'd put in zoom in quotes, extents in quotes, and end it that way. Yeah, this is all based on Lisp. So like I said, what I usually do is I set these right here. These are the ones that I set up for people when they start having trouble. This way it always resets things, but this is one of those hidden gems where as long as you have acad.lsp and it exists in that folder, anytime someone opens up AutoCAD on that machine, it will do that. Let's see, been a while. We'll have to dust off those skills. Have a good resource for it. Not really. Lisp hasn't had any updates since the 90s. So most of the books you find are dated late 90s. The best place to probably go is if you've got, in AutoCAD, you still have the Lisp function. You can type in VLIDE to bring up your Lisp editor, and you can go through there. Yep, and Frank, you do that all in your acad.doc.lisp. That works too. I usually like the acad.lsp just because then I can set up my system parameters here, and then I can use the ACAD doc to drive another portion of it if I'm loading Lisp routines, things like that.